Hi! Today I'd like to tell you about past simple. So first, why is it called past simple? Well, it's called past because it's about something that happened in the past. And it's called simple because the positive form consists of just one word, as opposed to past continuous form where there are two words and past perfect where there are two words as well. Let's start by looking at a real-life example. This is my great-grandfather Jānis Davidsons. He was a public figure and teacher. He lived a long and a socially active life. He was born in 1906, and from 1944 to 1958 he was actually the headmaster of what is now called Āgenskalna State Gymnasium. He also received the Gold Medal of Honor of the Order of the Three Stars in 1997. I like that he believed that a teacher is the gardener of souls. He died in 2007 at the age of 101. So in this example I used past simple to talk about my great-grandfather, Jānis Davidsons. In this presentation, we'll cover the meaning of past simple, the form, the spelling, and the use of this tense. You will also have tasks, so please prepare a notebook and a pen or a pencil and be ready to stop the presentation whenever there's a task. And here is the first task for you. Please take a moment to stop the presentation and write down what you did yesterday. Don't worry about the form at this moment, as we will learn it later. When you're ready, let's continue. I'll give you an example of my yesterday. It was Sunday yesterday, so I got up at 8 o'clock. We had breakfast all together, me, my boyfriend Mattis, and our son Maris. We didn't go out in the morning as it was raining, but we went out for a walk in the afternoon. In the evening, Monday's family came to visit us. We ate a pizza and chatted a little bit. After that, I took a bath and we went to sleep. So this gives you a little example of how we can use past simple to talk about things that happened in the past. This is also the general meaning of past simple. We use it to talk about something that happened in the past and that's already finished. So we went for a walk yesterday. It happened just once in the past. But we can also use past simple to talk about things that were true for a longer time period. Like my great-grandfather was a teacher. However, he is not alive anymore. That's why we need to use past simple. Now, let's go a step back and look at the example I gave you at the beginning of the presentation. As you can see, all these words which are in bold are in past simple. Also in this example, the words in bold are in past simple. So here are these verbs in past simple written separately. Your second task is to look at these verbs and to find something that is similar in their form. And when you're ready, let's check the answers. If you notice that some of these verbs have the ending ed, then you are on the correct path. And as you can see, there are actually two groups of verbs. And I can't even tell you which one is easier. Probably the regular verbs. So the groups are called the regular verbs and the irregular verbs. And the irregular verbs end with this ed. And there are special spelling rules, as the spelling sometimes changes, like in this example you see cry. And then there are a bunch of irregular verbs, and they have different endings. The words completely change, so basically it's a different word in past simple, and you have to learn them by heart. As you can see, and as you probably noticed from the examples, these are words that are used very often and they are very popular, so you really have to know them to speak English. They are usually presented in lists, So here's an example of a list of irregular verbs which you can find if you visit this home page address, which I have written at the top of the page. And to find the past simple form, you always have to look in the second column. These were pretty bad news, I think. But there are also good news. And the good news are that the form of this verb in past simple actually doesn't change. So it's the same verb for all the pronouns, I, we, you, he, she, it, and it doesn't change. Of course, to make this sentence complete, we also have to add this doer or who is doing the action in front of the verb, and after the verb we can have some kind of additional information. All of these three sentences are in past simple, so it doesn't matter how much information you put. If the verb is in past simple, the whole sentence is in past simple. Let's go to our next task. So please take a moment to think of a positive sentence in past simple. I'll help you a little bit. So this is the sentence structure as we just saw it, and here's the first example. Write down the rest of the pronouns with the same sentence. And when you're ready, let's check the answers. So if you wrote down the same form for all of the verbs, then you have correctly understood past simple. We can also summarize it in a table. So went doesn't change. Your next task is to think of a negative sentence in past simple. Use the same sentence we had before, so I went for a walk. Just think of a way how to make it negative. And when you're ready, let's check the answers. Here they are. So as you can see, the negative form is formed by adding two words. The first is did, and the second is not. Did is the past form of do. However, you have to be very careful because this went changes into go. We can say that this verb go gives away its past tense to this helping verb did. Let's go on. The negative sentences have a short form. Please try to write it down. And when you're ready, let's check it out. So here it is. We shorten the word not. How to make yes/no questions? Write down your ideas. And when you're ready, let's check the answers. So the questions are formed by moving did in front of these pronouns, which indicate who is the doer. And again, this verb gives away its past tense to this helping verb did. So be careful with that. If you would have any kind of extra question word before, then they would go just before this same structure. Short positive answers. What would they look like? Write down your ideas. And when you're ready, let's continue. So here they are. We just need this little helping verb did, and notice that we do not repeat the verb go or went. Short negative answers. What would they look like? Take a moment to write them down. Now let's check the answers. So here they are. Just add this didn't at the end, and we usually use this short form. So the main thing you have to remember about this form of past simple is that we use did and the verb without to. This is called the infinitive, which you can find in dictionary, to form negative sentences and questions in past simple. This is very important because there will be one big exception, and this is the verb to be. It's the same as in present simple, it's again an exception here. Let's move on to the next task. Think of the positive form of to be in past simple. I'll help you with an example. So this is the structure of the sentence, and here's the first example. I was a teacher. Please write down the same sentence for the rest of the pronouns. And when you're ready, let's check the answers. So if you wrote it like this, where to be changes to was or were in past simple, you did a good job. We can also sum it up in a table. So please think of how to make negative sentences with to be. And when you're ready, let's continue. So the negative sentences are formed just by adding not. Be very careful not to use did with this verb to be. The negative sentences also have short forms. What could they look like? When you have some ideas, let's continue. So these are the short forms. We just shorten this word, not. Then there are yes/no questions. What could they look like? When you have written down your ideas, let's check the answers. So we have to move this was or were to the beginning of the sentence. And notice that we do not add any kind of other word like it is for other verbs in past simple. And if you would have any kind of questions, that would go in front. So where was he a teacher? Why were we teachers? And so on. What do you think could the short positive answers to yes/no questions with the verb to be look like? Jot down your ideas. When you're ready, let's check them out. Yes, I was. Yes, we were. What could the negative answers to yes/no questions with the verb to be look like? When you have written down your ideas, let's check them out. So here they are. We should always use this shortened form. So the most important thing to take away is that we use was or were to form negative sentences and questions with the verb to be, as opposed to other verbs in past simple where we use did. Let's go on to discuss the spelling of regular verbs. So as I mentioned, there are special spelling rules for regular verbs, as sometimes the spelling changes when you need to add this ed ending. And here's a little task for you. Look at the changes in these verbs and group them into 5 different groups. And when you have done that, let's continue. So here are the groups. The first group are the verbs which just add this ed, and no changes happen in the spelling of the verb. The second group is a group of verbs which end in e, so they need to add just this d. The third group lose their y ending. It changes into I, and then you need to add the ed ending. Now the fourth and the fifth group, the last 2 groups, they double the final consonant. Let's talk a little bit more in detail about each of these groups. So, as I said, for most of the verbs, you just simply need to add the ed ending. And when the verb ends with e, you only add d. When the verb ends with a consonant plus y, then you need to change y into I and add this ed ending. However, now you have to be careful with these last 2 groups. When the verb is short and ends with a short vowel, this is a, e, I, o, u, and a consonant and just one consonant, which is the p, k, l, m, and so on, you need to double the final consonant before adding the ending. So plan, planned, stop, stopped. If the verb is longer and ends with a vowel and a consonant, you only need to double the final consonant if the last syllable is stressed. Like in these verbs refer, regret. Stressed, it means that we put more emphasis, refer, regret, on the second syllable. However, we do not double the final consonant if the first syllable is stressed, like in wonder, answer, where you don't really hear the second syllable. Now, as to use, there are just two simple uses which are pretty similar. First, past simple is used for finished actions in the past. This can be single, this means they happened just once. Like, I graduated from the University of Latvia in 2012, or actions that were true for a longer time period, like my great-grandfather was a teacher. And then the second use is quite similar, so these are things that happened one after another, and it's often used in stories. For example, he parked his car, went into the station, bought a ticket, and he had a cup of coffee and waited for the train, and so on. There are specific signal words connected with time, which are used with past simple, and your task is to try to find them in these sentences. And when you're ready, let's check the answers. So if you found these words, then you're correct. So yes, the signal words are connected with years, can be also centuries or decades, like in the 80s. Is this the word last weekend, last week? Just be careful with yesterday. We do not use last to talk about yesterday, the day before today. And ago, which means the specific time period before the present moment. And also the last use is that we can use it with such phrases as this morning, this month, this year, but only when the time period is over. So we can talk about the evening. If we talk about this morning, we can talk about it in the evening using past simple. Okay, so this is the end of our presentation. You have done a great job. And let's sum up what we have covered. So there are two forms of verbs in past simple. The first are regular verbs, for which you need to add the ed ending, and the second are irregular verbs, which you need to learn by heart. The most important things which you need to remember about the form is that the form doesn't change for any pronouns, it stays the same. However, when we form the negative form and the questions, we need to use this helping verb did, and this main verb go gives away its past form to this did. And then there is one big exception, which is the verb to be, for which we do not use did to make negative sentences and questions, and which has two forms: he was a teacher and we were teachers. As to spelling, there are these 5 groups. For the first group of verbs, which are most of the verbs, you don't need to change the spelling of the verb, you just simply add the ed. For the second one, these are the verbs which end in e, so you just add d. The third group, there is a little change happening, so if the verb ends with a consonant and y, you need to change the y into I and then add the ending ed. The fourth group and the fifth group are the trickiest. The fourth group concerns short verbs, which end in a short vowel followed by a consonant. In this case, you always need to double the consonant, but there has to be only one consonant before. And the last group, the fifth group, concerns longer verbs, which have the stress at the end of the verb, and then you also need to double this final consonant before adding the ending ed. And there are just two main uses for past simple. These are finished actions in the past, something that's already finished, completed, and also actions happening one after another, like in stories. And we use such signal words as yesterday, last week, last month, last year, years, centuries, decades, and phrases with a go and this morning, this evening, and so on, if the time period is over. These are the sources I used. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, you're welcome to watch the video again, search in Google, in grammar books, or ask me. Have a nice day. Goodbye.